What is going on, everybody? It's been a while. But I figured if I was going to come on, I was going to bring on a really good guest. And Jack Hammer is one of the best out there. The fact that he was at minicamp, at least for one day, I was like, that sold me on. I got to have Jack Hammer on. So how you doing, man?
I'm good. How you doing, Aaron?
Pretty good. Like I was telling you off stream, I'm back to work, so I'm beat freaking tired, but that's good. I need to get active.
I know how that is. That's same thing here. Working and doing this makes for long days. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So I mean, I guess we get into it. I mean, you were available, or you were only allowed to be there one day at minicamp. If you had to have any, bullet points or things that you saw that are of interest to us fans, do you think we might like to hear? Anything out of, just off the top of your head? I mean, you told me off stream, but how did Danny Gray, Burford, all those guys look to you?
Yeah, we can get, real quick. Sam Womack, I thought he looked good. Danny Gray obviously jumped off the page with what he was able to do in practice. Didn't really get to see much of Drake Jackson because there was only two defensive linemen and they were working on their own. So I didn't really spend much time watching them. Spencer Burford looked really good. Nick Zakel as well. Castro Fields, Tariq Castro Fields he was okay. He made a really nice play on the first play of 7-on-7s. Should have had another one, but didn't come up with the either of them. He didn't get either the breakup or the interception that he should have. The quarterback, Brock Purdy, he looked okay. He completed a bunch of passes underneath in 7-on-7, which is it's not overly impressive because that's there's no offensive line in front of you, so it makes those checkdowns really easy for you. But he did have a really nice throw down the sideline to Danny Gray, and then he did hit Gray deep down the middle once, although Gray had to stop and go up and get it instead of being able to just run underneath it.
That has to be an awesome experience to be able to see there, because you told me before, like with practices and stuff, you weren't able to make it up there. So that must have been awesome to be able to get a chance to go. It's only one day of practice that they show for rookie minicamp.
Yeah, they only had they did the 3 days. They were there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but they only allowed the media in on Friday for Friday's practice. And it was an awesome experience. I've been up there for a number, through training camp and then during the regular season for some practices, not all of them during the regular season, but some. And this was a different type of experience. It's a rookie minicamp, and it's there's a lot of teaching going on, and it's just helmets and shoulder, no shoulder pads and helmets and shorts really, and there's just a lot of teaching going on from the position coaches, and it was cool to see guys taking the next step towards trying to reach their dream.
Speaking of rookie minicamp, I from the reports that were out there, Vic Fangio actually was present. At least the days the media were there. What did you take out of that? And do you read into it? Are you like me, or you think like, oh, he's the future defensive coordinator after D'Amico Ryans leaves? Because that's what I like to do with my brain, and some of the fans do too. Or were you thinking, oh, that's just cool, he's here, but no other reason?
No, I mean, there were reports earlier in the offseason that he might join the 49ers in like an advisor role or something like that. So to have him there at camp watching kind of feeds into that thought process of maybe he's doing something behind the scenes that just hasn't been announced.
The thing with him too is somebody made a point, commented on a video I made. It was just like a short audio video that I do a lot of them, just saying he was there. And a lot of people, one guy made a good point. He's like, bad head coach, fantastic defensive coordinator. And I'm like, absolutely. If they're going to move on from anybody and actually maybe even get better on defense as far as coaching goes, Vic Fangio, to me, when I think of the Jim Harbaugh era and that whole little tiny stretch of greatness that we had, he's just as synonymous with that group on defense as Harbaugh it was with his guys on offense. And if he ends up being the defense coordinator next year, I would be totally fine with that for sure.
Yeah, and for sure. And if he is the defensive coordinator, that means that the defense really performed well this year, which bodes well for the 49ers record in 2022. So yeah, if that's what the direction that this is all leading towards, you can't really complain about that if you're a 49er fan, I don't think.
That's awesome. There was something that you posted on Twitter or retweeted. You might have retweeted it or posted it. And I was like, that actually would be a good topic for the show. You listed off, you said something about what the quarterbacks were going to be facing this year. It's, it was smart for the 49ers to really go in on, trying to get their pass rush to be better. And, you're right. I mean, you look at some of the quarterbacks we had to face this year. Mahomes comes to mind right away when I think of that. Do the Niners have a gluttony of defensive linemen? Do you think they have an issue cutting guys? Because, I mean, there's a lot of bodies and there are a lot of good bodies. I was listening to either I had a stream or I was part of a stream where we were talking about like who would be cut and guys that, it might have been Locked On 49ers. I might have been listening to Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker, and they were talking about like they're actually going to cut people that could probably start. What's your take on that whole defensive line and how encouraged are you just with the pick of Drake Jackson and just overall how they really addressed it?
Yeah, I mean, well, the tweet first off, it just comes from the fact that they have to, just look at the quarterbacks they're playing at Levi Stadium alone. You mentioned it: Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Tom Brady. Then they're going to have to play Russell Wilson on the road, Derek Carr on the road, and all those AFC West quarterbacks are pretty good, and so they're going to face a number of them. So they need to have a lot of bodies there. So I don't see it as a problem having so many guys, and it is going to be tough for them to cut down to the number that that they decide that they're going to go with, which I think is going to be 10 or 11. They typically carry 10. If they decide to carry only 2 quarterbacks, that's going to allow them to carry one more either offensive lineman or defensive lineman, I think is the direction that they would go. Right now, when you look at it, I think they have 13 guys that you would expect to be on NFL rosters somewhere. And then on top of that, they have another 3 or 4 guys that have been solid on their practice squad for the last couple of years. So they're extremely deep at that spot. It's going to, I think, and they're going to need it. They're going to need to have that pass rush. I think the group that, there's been a lot of talk about the loss of DJ Jones and the trouble that could cause. And in reality, I feel like they've improved upon DJ Jones in terms of the pass rush ability. I think they're going to be better there without him. And they're going to have, their run defense might take a step back, but most of the teams in the NFL don't run it all that much anymore anyway. So I think they're really set up to do well, and we'll see what happens with Jake Jackson. He's their top pick, in the top of the second round there, end of the second round where they took him. They have some really good. He has some really strong competition to pass over, and one thing that I'm interested to see, and it hasn't, I don't know if it's been talked about enough, is where is Eric Armstead going to end up? Are they going to move him back to the inside and outside role like he's been doing, where he's a outside edge guy on first and second down who then slides inside in nickel and dime packages? Or are they just going to let him play defensive tackle? Because I think that right there, that answer, I think will help you start to figure out who makes the roster and what that defensive line is going to look like.
It's funny, we're so deep at a lot of positions, but the one remaining question is safety. And part of me thinks like Jaquiski Tart, and a lot of people are saying it's not going to happen. They feel like that ship has sailed, but part of me feels like in the end he's going to end up re-signing. Or do you feel that their starting free safety is on the roster, and it's going to be between the guys they brought in and guys that were already there, undrafted free agent and all? I mean, I for all the concern I don't have with other positions, I am definitely concerned at that position because, it's kind of the last line of defense and pass coverage. So what's your take on all that? Do you think the Niners have their safety on the roster, or do you think there could always be a move, closer as we get to the season?
I think the 49ers believe in Talanoa Hufanga And that's the direction that they're going to be going at safety. And that's going to be Jimmy Ward at one spot and Talanoa Hufanga at the other. And they have some other guys like George Odom as well, who has experience as a starter. So they have some other guy, and Tarvarius Moore, who started for the 49ers. So they have a group of guys who can fill different roles. And, Jimmy Ward will probably, I think, if that's the setup and they go in that direction, you'd see probably Talanoa Hufanga as more of the strong safety role, and Jimmy Ward is more of the free safety in that setup more often than not.
Have you picked up any on, and something I picked up on, with the 49ers almost starting to kind of change the philosophy of the always injured guys and kind of moving on from them? Are you noticing that kind of, with Tart, for instance, and also a guy, I'm trying to think, his name's right on the top of my head. D Ford eventually probably is going to be released. Mm-hmm. And Raheem Mostert is now in Miami. Are you seeing a little bit of a change in philosophy, or is that just the natural progression of this roster? Because I feel like the Niners, I know last year after the draft, or it might have been post-draft, John Lynch was asked something about, the injuries and something, and he made a comment about how the draft board, there definitely was, it's definitely starting to be something that's coming into the conversation when they're drafting guys. Because I know they drafted the defensive tackle, I can't think of his name right now, in the 6th round. And I'm thinking, if you're going to draft anybody who has an injury concern, that's where you draft them. Whereas you had the Belky days where they would draft people with the mindset of this dude's going to be a starter. We got a steal here. And a lot of these guys never made it onto the field, or their injury issues were so much more severe. Do you see it, or am I kind of making something up with my own mind?
I think I think you're right. I think they've been doing a better job of going out and trying to bring in players who don't have a long history of injury, unless it's towards the back half of the roster. That was one of my issues with them last year going into the season, especially in the secondary, was that they didn't address corner before the 2021 season, and they went in there rolling in there with Emmanuel Mosley and Jason Verrett as your starters on the outside, and then they had even K'Wan Williams, and then at the safety spot, Jimmy Ward and Jaquaski Tart. And you start looking around that secondary, and Jason Verrett has huge injury issues throughout his career. Even Emmanuel Mosley has been dinged up throughout. Jaquaski Tart, he's the safety version of Jimmy Garoppolo in terms of his health. And then, Jimmy Ward had a lot of injuries issues early on, but he's been much better for the last 3 or 4 years.
He has.
And so they went on there with that group, and then boom, it hit them, week 1. And I think that set them back. They were able to beat, a Philadelphia Eagles team, which had a good, strong defense with a quarterback who was trying to figure out his way. And then after that, they started facing some better quarterbacks, and their secondary was depleted. And it wasn't until they kind of made some adjustments along the defensive line, and they started getting healthier in the secondary, that the team started winning games. I don't think it should be a surprise as to why all of a sudden they started winning in the second half of the year.
I heard, and I'll always name drop guys in a positive way on my fellow streamers. I was listening to Jesse. I don't know if he was with Sunil or Rohan. I forget exactly who he was streaming with. Might have been you. He made a comment about this is probably the deepest and most skilled secondary the Niners have had since the mid 90s. Now, are you jumping feet first with that one, or are you a little bit more like, let's wait and see? Because I think Emmanuel Mosley is one of the most underrated corners, especially being an undrafted guy, an undrafted free agent. And then, you bring Verrett in as more of an insurance policy. He's not someone you're depending on. You got Charvarius Ward. And then you got the Womack kid that was drafted a little bit later. And you got the guys you drafted last year. I feel like the Niners are finally starting to learn from their mistakes. People are like, oh, they drafted another running back. But it's like, we went into last season think we were good at running back, and then we had all those injuries. Same thing with the secondary. I feel like the Niners are learning, like, oh, we had issues with that position group. We had issues with that position group. Let's triple down on those players, whether it's undrafted free agents or draft picks. What's your thought on this secondary? I think they're really talented. Like I said, the safety position is my biggest concern. But cornerback wise, if they stay healthy, I think they are pretty skilled.
I agree with that. I didn't get to see Ambry Thomas and Deommodore Lenoir last year in rookie minicamp. So, I didn't get to see them until they got into training camp. So I can't tell how, compare them to what I saw on Friday. But I think that this is a really talented group. I think that Womack is a guy who could step in and he's going to be I think he's somebody to keep an eye on throughout the training camp and the preseason games, because I think he might surprise some folks that are sleeping on him because they haven't seen enough of him yet. But like you said, Charvarius Ward is a huge pickup to get him started on one side. If Emmanuel Mosley, is a little bit of a question mark opposite of him, I think. Mosley, he's a really good player, but like I said, he's dealt with injury issues throughout his career so far. So that's the problem that you have there. You have Ambry Thomas, Deommodore Lenoir coming back. It's a really good group. The corner group, I'm pretty happy with that. Even the safety position, Jimmy Ward, people are down on Talanoa Hufanga. I know that if you go back and you watch his film from last year, there's definitely some areas of issues and that of concern. He does have some weaknesses in terms of his speed and those types of things. He generally makes up for that with his play recognition and at times. What I'll say about him is that when he played alongside Jimmy Ward, the Flyers were 2-0. The one game they lost was when both Tart and Ward were injured, and he was back there with I don't remember the guy's name, number 32, the other secondary who they'd picked up from another team.
I know you're talking about. I can't think of his name either.
Yeah, right. And so that was the one game they lost. And I've seen people show the clip of him against Minnesota blowing it on the touchdown because he bit on the underneath route instead of staying deep, which was a bad rep. But I remember watching the NFC Championship game and seeing Jimmy Ward do basically the same thing, and the only difference was the receiver dropped the ball. So I think they're in a good spot. I really do. I think this is a really talented team that has a lot of positive pieces. And are there some concerns or things to be concerned about? Yeah, but at the same time, I think they have enough talent that they're going to win more than they're going to lose.
Are you surprised at the 49ers, knowing that they're a pass rush first mentality, like rush first, everything else comes second, that they actually invested into the secondary this offseason with the draft and with last year and with this year in the draft as well, and undrafted free agent with the O'Neal kid that they brought in for safety? Are you surprised that they kind of went against script or against the nature of what they've been doing since they've gotten here, where it seems like defensive line is pretty much priority and everything else comes second?
I don't think that they did anything different. The defensive line has been primarily what they focused on, and that's what they did this year, right? They've got a ton of defensive linemen during free agency, and then in the draft they went defensive line first. They waited until round 5 to get a cornerback, which is typically what they've done. Last year they took one in round 3 and Ambry Thomas, but this year they waited until round 5 and then at the end of round 6. I don't think it was a big change there. I just think that it was a spot where they wanted to get better, and they had somebody that they really liked that they could wait on. Because I really think that this back is going to be something.
Are you and this is kind of, I'm switching to offense. Are you against the pick of running back in the 3rd round as much as everybody else is? Or have you gotten a chance to look at film or just kind of maybe listen to people that you might know on the inside, so to speak, why the Niners decided to draft running back at I forget his name, TDP, PDD.
Yeah.
I forget.
TDP, Tyrion Davis-Price. Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
I don't have a problem with them taking a running back in the 3rd round. I went into the draft in all of my mock drafts and stuff like that. I had a feeling that they were going to go running back in round 3 or 4 early on in the draft, just based off of the players that they were talking to. Kind of led me to believe that they were going to take someone early. So I don't have a problem with him taking a player in round 3 at 93. Tyrion Davis-Price at that spot was a little bit of a surprise for me. I think that was I've been a little hard on that pick. I understand the pick. I understand. I think I understand what they're trying to do there. In that, you look at the running back room that they have. People really like Elijah Mitchell. Awesome, but Elijah Mitchell also missed 6 games last year, 5 or 6 games. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but he missed. There was a stretch of 3 weeks where he was out at one point. Trey Sermon, we didn't get to see enough of him, and for whatever reason, they didn't seem to be all that excited about him, even though when he did play, his numbers were comparable to that of Elijah Mitchell against common opponents. And then you have Jermichael Hasty, who's a smaller guy, and Jeff Wilson Jr., who's a veteran, but he's been banged up too. So you've got some really good running backs, but you don't have health, and so going out and getting another guy, that totally makes sense to me. And if I'm the 49ers, I would like to see the 49ers try Trey Sermon as their third down back, because I think he could do it.
Some people thought of the pick of TDP in the third as a comment or as a indictment on their disappointment with Trey Sermon. Did you see it that way, or do you think they're just doubling down or tripling down on a position where they've had some injuries?
I think it's as much about the fact that Elijah Mitchell couldn't stay healthy as it was anything to do with Trey Sermon. You watch, when I watch the film of Tyrion Davis-Price, when I watch him on film, I see Elijah Mitchell, right? It's all between the tackles. It's straight up the field. There's not a whole lot of speed to the outside. It's mostly going to be between the tackles and making people miss and trying to run people over. And that's what Elijah Mitchell is. And if you can get 17 games out of that trio of, I think, Sermon and Price and Mitchell, I think you're on a good track. And then whoever the fourth back is, that'll be somebody who I think needs to be able to play special teams if they're active.
I'm jumping into the chat. My boy Rich, Kelts Chronicles. He says, Jack, thoughts on Quantrez Knight?
I don't really know enough about him. I haven't watched any of his film or anything like that. And from what I saw of him on Friday, he didn't stand out. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I wasn't really focusing on him as much either. I was focusing more on some of the other one-on-one matchups.
It's funny. I always have the impression that you don't get much out of mini camps, but then hearing from what you're saying, you do. You can and do sometimes see things. I don't know if because I'm not I'm not a media guy. I don't have credentials. I'm not as close to things. I haven't been to the combine, those kind of things. Where as a fan, you're just like, oh, it's just a little bit of 7-on-7, no big deal. But you've definitely changed my perspective on that for sure, because it sounds like you can really make some strides even in rookie minicamp. So be interesting.
Yeah, I think the thing for me when it comes to the rookie minicamp was just putting eyes on these guys and to see if they were kind of what I'd heard about them, right? Or what I've seen about them. So like, for example, I'd done a couple of film breakdowns on Womack last week. And so I'd watched a bunch of his film leading up to it. So I wanted to see what he looked like. And he looked just like the guy I had seen on film. Everything that from the way that he lined up to the way that everything about him looked the same. And so that was one. Same thing with Castro Fields and Danny Gray. Those are the three that probably, you focus on the most because that's where the ball's going and that kind of thing. And then watching the offensive lineman was, I wouldn't say that I took a whole lot away from it. Like, wow, these guys are going to be starters or these guys are going to be this or that. I think that's jumping the gun a bit. I can't make I'm not going to make any definitive statements based off of it, other than what I will say is that the draft picks they showed why they were the draft picks. Like why they were the ones that got selected. They all looked better than the undrafted free agents and tryout guys there. And we're going to learn more as we go through the process and we get to see them out there with the veterans at the next time that we have media availability.
I don't know if you were there for the drill that Chris Kasarik was doing. Random thought, because it looked super difficult, where the defensive lineman, I think it was Drake Jackson, they're literally on their knees and they have to like shoot up and hit the sled. And I'm just watching the comments for people that have played football talking about how difficult. I don't know if you've caught that, where it looked like a super difficult drill. I've never seen a drill where you had to get that low to get up under someone's pad, but it was probably one of the most difficult looking things I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's something that they do in training camp and things like that. So I've seen them do it. I didn't see them doing it on Friday, but that is something that I've seen them doing and working on in training camp. The other one that's fun to watch them do is when they're running the hoop, because that's really good for the bend to watch how they can turn the corner like that. And I know he looked pretty impressive for the people that I know who were actually watching that one. I was on the other field. I focused on the offensive lineman,
right,
and the 7-on-7. I got some shots of everybody during the warm-ups. I kind of just wanted to see what the warm-ups looked like and how different it was, because you had a new quarterback coach, a new receiver coach, and a new running back coach. So I wanted to see how different their individual periods were. So check that out. And then once those broke up, you can only watch receivers and quarterbacks throw the ball against there so long before you get, it just becomes repetitive. So I went over and spent most of the practice watching the offensive lineman, and then I'd turn to watch the 7-on-7 because of where I was standing.
That's so awesome. I'm so glad you got to go. Random question from the comments. Eric Weeze asks, Jackhammer, is that your real name?
Yeah. What are you thinking, man? Come on now.
Probably best name out there, especially if you were in a different line of work, if you know what I mean. See, I'm keeping it PG. Question that it's kind of a convoluted question. So the ever-present Jimmy Garoppolo issue, where, they're still thinking they want to get some value from him if they can trade him. There's a report saying that they might eventually release him, and that's what his agent wanted the whole time. Whatever happens with that, if the Niners have a season where they think they have a decent shot in the playoffs, with a lot of people saying, and even I've said it too, like maybe they play the budget game sometimes, would you see the Niners making a mid-season move with the money they save, they have possibly freed up? Or are they with the mindset that money is set aside for guys that they want to keep? Because there's been talk that, like, hey, if they're having a decent season with Trey and they think they're good and that money's off the books, they could make a midseason move, and everybody needs to stop spazzing like myself that they didn't go, and sign every good, great defensive player or offensive player in free agency.
I think some of that money is going to go to Deebo Samuel. If they get a deal done with him, and some of it's going to have to go there. And Charles is right. Aaron's a good name too.
Thank you.
I think some of that money is going to have to go to Deebo Samuel. I don't see the 49ers wanting to extend Jimmy Ward and Emmanuel Mosley. That's kind of the only other guys that they could really do at this point. And I don't see them wanting to do that with those guys. Or it's either the 49ers not wanting to do it or the players not wanting to do it. It's just not happening. So they're going to have to move Jimmy Garoppolo at some point to get the Deebo Samuel deal done. The numbers don't work otherwise. And unless Garoppolo decides he wants to take less money, which I don't think anybody believes is actually going to happen.
No, he's so weird. It's so weird too, because let's be honest. I mean, I'll be honest. Yeah, they've been winners for the most part since he's been here. I will always agree on that. But man, for the money that Jimmy Garoppolo, like I don't think they've ever asked him, or he's never took a pay cut as far as like trimming his cap number, and the amount of money that his agent wants to get for him for the production that he actually puts out there. It's astounding. I don't know if that's just the market for quarterbacks or if his agents, I don't get it. I mean, for what he's done production wise, the amount of money that he's making, it just, they don't add up. But again, that's the quarterback market.
I think it's the quarterback market. And, if I'm a team and I'm trading for a quarterback, I kind of want to have that quarterback be able to throw. I don't want to make that trade without him being able to throw.
Right.
Doesn't do me any good to do that. So I think teams are waiting for him to get healthy so that they can see that. And then I also think that, I think the 49ers are also waiting for that to happen so that they can get out of the $7.5 million that they would lose by releasing him today. So just got to have a little bit of patience with this thing, and it'll play out.
I've kind of gotten off my pulpit and my high horse about the whole Jimmy thing and just saying, whenever it happens, it happens. And I kind of have gotten that way. And the news itself has gotten really quiet in the Deebo Samuel area too, which makes me think that there's a chance that they're going to get something done. Are you in that mindset too, just because of how quiet things have been lately?
That something's going to get done with Jimmy Garoppolo?
No, with Deebo Samuel. Excuse me.
Oh, with Deebo Samuel, yeah. I've felt all along that it's something that they would eventually get done. It was just and it was all about money, and eventually it was gonna happen. And so I would think that this is going to get done in July, early August, right around the time they report to camp. I think is when we'll see it get done.
Celts Chronicle says Jackhammer and Naylor are definitely names that could be used in another business.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why I feel bad for Sunil, because he comes on with me on Tuesdays and then he goes over with Jesse after, so you can put those two together and see what poor Sunil.
Yeah, I'm just Aaron. I have a biblical name, so my name's too clean to ever. I mean, I could be Aaron from the Key and Peele skit, but that's pretty much it. I thought about getting that T-shirt too. Because some people call me that, which is ridiculous, but whatever. So with the Jimmy Garoppolo thing eventually happening, hopefully, because you said you were you weren't really too impressed with Purdy. Could Purdy make this roster as a third string quarterback?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yes. He's I didn't mean it to I'm not impressed with him, or I don't think, he's not going to, I guess where I'm going with that is he's not going to threaten Trey Lance. And there's been people talking about that. He's not going to threaten Trey Lance. There's a big difference between those two, with the way that they throw the ball and everything like that. And, as a backup third string guy, I think that, Purdy could have a long career in that type of a role. We've seen it with other guys.
He seemed his press conference, he seemed like a no nonsense kind of guy, almost like he's got a little bit of not an ego, but like the fact that he was Mr. Irrelevant. Like I'm listening to him talk, I'm like, man, this dude's got a little bit of a streak of like red ass. Like he looks like, you know what I mean? Like I that's what I got from him. And like, he's almost got something to prove. And I freaking love that. It's cool. Everyone makes this big thing about Mr. Irrelevant, but I don't know about you, but if I got drafted and they called me Mr. Irrelevant, I'd be pretty pissed off. So I just got a strange vibe listening to him. He's very serious. He seemed like a guy that takes things very seriously, which is fine. So,
yeah, I think that's part of it. I think he takes it extremely serious, and he's had to fight his way for everything that he's been able to get so far in terms of, the job at Iowa State, and then joining the 49ers here. He's had to battle his way through it. And yeah, I think there's definitely a bit of a chip on his shoulder in the way that he is trying to approach this so that he can get through it and hopefully stick.
Rich from Celts Chronicle says Purdy is the next Breeze. Let's pump the brakes, Rich, just a bit. Let's see if he can make.
That is a Purdy big stretch right there.
Purdy big, ba-doom, doom. I forgot. I'm kind of jumping back and forth because I'm talking a lot about the rookies. One thing I noticed from looking at Drake Jackson is he looks like he has a type of body that he could play base end and also outside rusher. Do you get that sense too? Just from he looks like if you look at his body, he's a, D Ford, everyone talks about he's like the next D Ford and he's got this bend and stuff. He definitely has a different body composition, at least from my eyes.
Well, yeah, if you compare him to Nick Bosa, they're not even close, right? Nick Bosa's got, two quad, his quad, one of his quads is like two of mine, right? Put together, right. And so on. And then you put you put Jake Jackson. I was looking at one of the things I was looking at him as he was talking to us in the media room before practice, and I was like, trying to, envision him standing next to Nick Bosa, and he's going to look small next to Nick Bosa in terms of the thickness of his legs and stuff like that. But that's what they look for in that spot opposite of Nick Bosa. They look for a guy that's got some speed that can come off the edge. And Jackson, I think, his pass of playing some linebacker gives him some movement ability, and from the film that I've seen, he does a decent job of standing up against the run. So I have a hard time really thinking that eventually he's not going to be a 3-down player. I don't think he's going to be a 3-down player right off the bat, but I think he eventually will grow into that.
Some people have commented on his body composition and that, he's had some weight issues. Is that a lot of people say, or some people think that they're worried about it. And then there's talk of it has to do with the fact that he had to switch positions and he's up and down with his weight. Are you more on that mindset that it's because, with coaching changes and them asking him to be outside linebacker, and then I don't know if he was a base defensive end. I'm not exactly sure exactly what he played all the time. At least the year that a lot of people are looking at is like what they see him as it translates to the NFL. I forgot if it was his sophomore or his rookie year where like he really shined as that outside pass rusher. Are you worried about his body composition, or is that just something that you think that he'll figure out now that he's in an NFL weight room?
Well, I think it's something that he's going to have to keep his eye on, because he has kind of had to bounce around a little bit, right? So they're going to he's going to have to keep an eye on it. It was something that he talked about on Friday about, having to keep himself at a specific weight that they're looking to keep him at, I think around 265 or somewhere in that ballpark. And he's going to need to be able to stay right around there. And the 49ers have a strength and conditioning staff that has done this with a number of guys.
Does Burford get Staley's 74? And do y'all think he shows a vote of confidence, or does that show a vote of confidence by the organization?
It's 74 is a number that has a lot of history with the 49ers going.
Steve Wallace.
In my days, it's along the offensive line, it's Joe Staley and Steve Wallace, and then there was also over on the defensive side, Fred Dean was 74
That's
as
right.
well.
That's right.
So it's 74 is kind of a big number when it comes to 49ers linemen.
Dave Fiore.
Yeah, Dave Fiore was 74 as well. I think Spencer Burford's going to be a starter in the next 2 years. I think he's going to be your next starting right tackle.
You think so?
Either starting right tackle or starting left tackle. Yes.
Wow, that's coming from you. I trust you very much. So that's awesome.
Well, okay. I guess when you look at the way that this team is constructed,
Mm-hmm.
Mike McGlinchey is in his 5th year option, $10.8 million. So the 49ers are going to want to pay him more than that, which is probably would have to happen if they re-sign him after this year. I don't think so, and that's why between Burford and Jalen Moore, I think you're seeing competition there. The one that's not talked about a lot is also Trent Williams over on the other side. He has a $10 million guarantee that kicks in on April 1st of 2023. If the 49ers opt into that and they pick that up, they are opting into the final 3 years of his contract, which are salary cap hits of $24 to $26 million for a guy that's an aging veteran, very good still, but he's he hasn't played a full season since I think what was it 2013? I think it was.
It's been a while.
Yeah, the last time that he's played a full 16 game schedule, let alone 17. And he still plays at a high level. So don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to throw him out, but we start having to make some decisions when it comes to finances, and that could be part of what they're looking at. I think when you look at that situation, we'll find out early next year, because they're either gonna extend him to lower his cap hit, or maybe they move on.
I forgot what I was going to say. As far as the way that the Niners, I feel like, okay, during the Walsh era, they used to draft guys and look to replace guys earlier rather than later. Moving on from them when they still have some sort of value. Sure. And I feel like this particular front office with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan is it's like a meritocracy. I mean, eventually, hey, you're right. Like you said, very much maybe they don't pick up that option. Same thing with Mike McGlinchey. Do you kind of get that sense that they're kind of almost like it's like a throwback to the Walsh era? Because a lot of players who played under Walsh had an axe to grind when they were cut early, and they moved on from guys before they thought they were done. Do you get the sense that the Niners kind of adopted that, or is that just you think their philosophy of just trying to, get themselves in a good position cap wise by drafting someone as a replacement and being able to move on and be confident that the guy that they're replacing with a cheaper valued player can step in and be just as productive as the guy that they're replacing?
There's times that you can do that. I that's something this is an interesting one because I've heard people talk about that a lot this offseason when it comes to the 49ers and how Bill Walsh would cut players a year earlier than a year later. And I struggle with that because I don't know of a player who was really good that he did that with.
Or maybe they thought they were better than what they were.
Well, I mean, I think that comment actually comes from Randy Cross. I think Randy Cross made that comment during one of those, shows that, I don't know if it was the Bill Walsh Football Life show,
I know what
or
you're talking
if it
about.
was just like a kind of a review of like the 88 season, because that was his final season. But Randy Cross might have been one of those guys. I mean, Cross started in 79 and retired in 88. I think it was 79 when Cross joined the 49ers. It could have been a little earlier, but he maybe it was something that happened to Randy Cross, so that's why he felt like it. He still had time to go. But they had drafted his replacement, and he was on the and he was on the backside of his career. I think when you look at this 49ers team right now, I don't know how many guys you can say are on the back end of their career.
Yeah, they're pretty young. They were one of the older teams last year, but they've turned over the roster a little bit, and they still, part of the older, like the part of them having an older roster last year was because they had a few guys that were on the backside, right? Alex Mack really blew that number up for him, and so on and so forth. So I don't know. I have a hard time trying to figure out who would be the guy that they would replace just because they feel like he's getting old, other than maybe Jimmy Ward, and that's not going to come till next year. I mean, I feel like as an organization, a lot of organizations do that. I think the Steelers, the Patriots, they draft replacements. Not necessarily they draft replacements. They just, if you want to stay competitive a long time, you can't blow your cap load on freaking, 6 guys. And the only way to do that is continually draft well, continually, the undrafted free agents, whatever. And that's how you, for instance, a lot of people thought that it was a mistake. Why are the Niners drafting running back so high when you can get a guy in the 6th round or an undrafted guy that could be just as value and you don't have to spend all that money on him? I just think that in order to elongate a window, or at least a playoff window or a Super Bowl window, I think you do have to do a little bit of money ball approach. Not everywhere, because I've jumped off that pulpit about, the Niners are cheap. Now that I look at it, they're not really cheap. They're just trying to elongate their window of being a really good team. So go ahead.
I mean, it gets hard to start spending if you want to have guys like Fred Warner and George Kittle and Trent Williams and Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel and so on, all getting paid at the top end of the salary schedule,
right?
Kind of leading the way. That means that you have to have lesser paid guys to make up the difference, right? We're not talking about 1985 anymore, where you can just spend on whoever you want. You've got to fit it into a budget.
Yeah.
And so you can't. And the 49ers, if you look at the numbers, they do a pretty good job of spending money when it comes to their signing bonuses and guaranteed money. They're one of the top. They're, I know for sure, in the upper half of the NFL. I don't know exactly what the number is. I haven't looked at it in the last couple of weeks, but they spend their money. But you can only do so much. You can move some things around or what have you, but most of these teams the Rams were somebody that everybody kept talking about going all in, but the Rams didn't go all.
I did that.
Well, but yeah, no, not just you. I mean, there was the Rams themselves talked about going all in, right? Last year,
picks or whatever they call it. Yeah, the T-shirt.
Yeah, after the picks, and they said they were going all in when they did the signing of the quarterback of Stafford, and it paid off for them. But outside of Stafford, all the other additions that they made came during the season,
right?
And so, I think that goes back to your question earlier. If the 49ers are in a position, say week 8, week 9, right before the trading deadline, where there might be somebody that's out there that's available that can help them get over the hump, kind of like what they saw. They'll go after him. We saw them do it in 2019. They went out and got Emmanuel Sanders when that, that wasn't even something that was on my radar watching the team that year. I thought they were fine, but they went out and picked him up, and you could see the difference in the passing game with him out there. So
Rich has been saying this quite a bit. He thinks that the Niners are a dynasty in the making right now.
I think I don't know. They're a dynasty in the making of Trey Lance is who everybody wants him to be.
Exactly.
Be the quarterback. In order to have a dynasty in the NFL, you have to have the quarterback. It starts at that spot. That's why the 49ers dynasty had Joe Montana and Steve Young.
That's right.
And and so beyond that, if those two weren't on the field, they were still going to win games, but they weren't going to be a 5-time Super Bowl winning team.
Me and you we're about the same age. We're pretty close in age. Mm-hmm. We got lucky. Sure. So we got to go from Joe Montana to Steve Young and the Niners winning 5 Super Bowls. That doesn't happen, man. That just doesn't happen. To go from Jerry Rice to T.O., I mean, like, the Niners have had some of the greatest players ever at their positions on their roster. People could talk about us living in the past. All I always say to people is, at least we have a past, especially when Seattle fans used to come at me. They'd be like, man, you live in the 80s. I'm like, listen, bro, those 5 championships, they might not, mean anything. They still count. They're still there. So, but I do live in the now time. My nephew was born in 95. He's going to be 27. He's only experienced the 2 losses. He's never experienced the win. And I remember sitting with him when we lost to Baltimore. That was sad because my dad had just passed away, and life was whatever. And like the Niners were in the Super Bowl, and it was like, you know what, my real life sucks right now. But and the fact that it didn't happen, I just remember sitting there just being like depressed. And then when we lost to the Chiefs, it was even worse because we were up. So. I don't think some of us fans who grew up back then know how lucky we actually had it. We had it pretty good. And I'm glad that the Niners are in the hands of people that actually care about that and want to bring that back.
Yeah, no, we were extremely lucky to have the teams that we grew up watching. Kind of, as the Steve Young era started to kind of, wind down, and you kind of felt like there was going to be an end to that.
Yeah.
And even when Steve Young left, it's not like Jeff Garcia wasn't making Pro Bowls. He was good. As a member of the 49ers. That was but what it showed was how much Steve Young was carrying that roster, especially the defensive side of the ball. Because once Young was gone and it became Jeff Garcia's team, he did a good job of getting them there. But they had to build that thing back up, and it wasn't in the 99 season when they tanked after Young got knocked out. I
remember that game like it was yesterday.
That wasn't on Garcia, but that team they were not good around that period.
They had their defense, that whole team, really, not just their defense. I don't know if you remember the salary cap hell that they were in for a little bit because of what they had to do with some of those rosters during the years that they were competitive, and he backloaded a lot of stuff. There was that year that they got rid of Garcia and T.O. and everything. That was a sad time. I remember us bringing in just guys that no one's ever heard of, and just going into the season knowing that we have zero freaking hope. It's not like that anymore, but man, whew.
No, I mean, here's the thing, right? And I'm not going to make excuses for Jed York. People talk about about Eddie DeBartolo and so on and so forth, but and he was a terrific owner. So don't get me wrong. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. But he was able to do it a different way. He didn't have a salary cap to deal with until '94. They won the Super Bowl the first year of the salary cap. They never made it back during his time. They only made it to the NFC Championship game one more time after '94 as an owner. '99 when they fell apart, he was the owner. 2000 when they were awful again, he was still the owner. The rebuilding started under him during his time period that he was there. He wanted to win. He won. He did what he had to do, and the salary cap caught up with him. And and then they had to revamp everything eventually there. And Garcia, like you said, Garcia and Owens were gone, and those were the dark days of the 49ers for there in the early 2000s.
Couple more quick questions before we get out of here. All this Trey Lance garbage, I just think people are bored in the off season. I'm not saying that guys like you who write articles are bored, but there's definitely some people in the media that just like to stir nothing and make something out of it. Just all the Trey Lance talk about it being underwhelming, and then you kind of go to Chris Sims with his low rankings. There was this thing that came out yesterday. I posted a video about it. I can't even explain what it was. Some sort of analytics of like how the Niners will be the 8th worst team, and they'll actually be worse than the Detroit Lions because of their quarterback, and the people saying that he's not going to be very good, and the Niners are going to suffer for it. What the hell, man? Like what is going on right now? Can we get to training camp already?
No, just give me. Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things, like I was telling Sunil yesterday, it was good to get out there for rookie minicamp. I understand there's a long way to go, but it was good to get out there for nothing else, to see people run around and be able to talk about stuff on the field instead of this stuff. How you doing there, Niner faithful? Hope you're doing well too. It's just, the Trey Lance stuff is exhausting to me. And I keep finding myself just wanting to repeat the same thing all over, over and over again. It's like, did you watch him play? Because if Steve Young put it perfectly yesterday, right? If you're a fan or a media person who is just saying that he's not ready, that means nothing. It means nothing, because of course he's not ready. He hasn't played. He can. It doesn't mean that when he does play, he's not going to be good. Of course, he's not ready. Nobody's. Were you ready to go to work the first day that you showed up at your new job?
Hell no, bro. I was hurting.
It took you a couple of weeks, and then by probably maybe a couple of weeks into it, you were fine, right?
Right.
It's the same thing with Trey Lance. He's going to get there. All these people that talk about Trey Lance not being ready, if you ask them to show you examples, they can't show you examples.
No.
There's every time I post something positive or something about Trey Lance, not even doesn't have to be positive, just something about Trey Lance being the quarterback, whatever. There's one guy who always responds back, and I just ignore him because I don't want to get into the back and forth. Everybody knows who he is. If you want to talk and you want to tell me that the biggest reason that he shouldn't be here's one of them. If you want to tell me that the reason he shouldn't be the starting quarterback is because of their third down conversion rating percentage, that they had when he was the quarterback. Is it something that I'm concerned about? Absolutely. I put that out on Twitter myself a long time ago, was that the third and fourth down numbers with him were bad. But at the same time, it's not just about Trey Lance. Part of it was Trey Lance, but a big part of it also was the play calling from Kyle Shanahan changed a little bit, and the way that he attacked defenses changed. On third and short and fourth and short, they were, especially on fourth and short, they went for it more often and things like that. They should have beat Arizona. There were some questionable, in that Arizona game, there were some questionable decisions that were made by Kyle Shanahan to not take the points when it was 7-0 and they were on the goal line and fourth down. Kick the field goal, put points on the board. Instead, you go for it and you get stopped, and then it's now still 7-0 and all the momentum swings to the other side. And it's just, little things like that add up. And when I watch Trey Lance play, is he a finished product? No, but he's the stuff that people are saying about him is just crazy, especially when you hear, I don't know, man. Kyle Shanahan at the owners meeting told everybody.
You're right. I saw you post that today.
That the team was ready to, if they didn't feel like Trey Lance was ready to be the quarterback, they wouldn't have tried to trade Jimmy. They wouldn't have been looking to trade Jimmy Garoppolo if they weren't ready to move on.
Exactly.
The only reason that Jimmy Garoppolo is on the roster right now is because he got surgery and they couldn't move him.
That's right.
And they're not, and they don't want to deal with the $7.5 million. They're kind of able to work around it and that leads to the comment by John Lynch, right? John Lynch saying how they didn't want to overspend this year and so on. Yeah, they didn't want to overspend because they want to make sure that they have that money. They're trying to keep Deebo Samuel. They're trying to keep Nick Bosa. Do you realize how much money those two guys are going to make when they get their deal signed? Nick Bosa is going to be a $35 million a year player.
That's crazy.
And you can't be signing a bunch of guys when you know that you have these two pillars of your organization, one on offense and one on defense that you want to re-sign. And
yeah, I agree.
I'll step down now.
No, you're good. Like your fire is because I'm tired today and your fire got me going. No, you're right. I think a lot of it too. I'm an East Coast guy. I'm from New York, Western New York. People on this coast, especially people at ESPN, they don't watch the games. And it's obvious. We watch the games. I have NFL Sunday ticket. I live in Western New York. I watch every 49er game. I'm not an analyst. I'm not a media member like you who writes articles. I'm just a dude, but I have eyes and I see what I see. And you could tell just by what these dudes, they're all copying each other. They're all repeating everybody else's. You know what I mean? It's after a while. That's why I don't watch ESPN. That's why I don't watch. I love NFL Network, but in the off season, dude, I don't watch anything because I get so mad. And my brother's like, "Why are you getting mad?" I'm like, "Because the Niners are getting disrespected." But at the end of the day, we still have a little bit before the season starts. Everybody needs to calm down, including myself. And we're gonna figure it out, man. We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna know.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Go
ahead.
Let me say one thing about like the national media and the way that you're performing. I noticed this last off season because the 49ers were, we're all kind of stuck at home with COVID. We're kind of starting to come out of it around that point where we can start going back to work. But the 49ers trade up to 3, and so you're kind of trying to see all the information that's coming, being put out there on NFL Network and ESPN and all that stuff, right? To hear what people are saying and what have you. And I remember watching NFL Network, and they were doing a breakdown on, I don't remember the quarterback. Let's just say it was Trey Lance. I don't think it was Lance, but it was one of the quarterbacks, right? And they talked about, it was actually Mac Jones. They showed some plays with Mac Jones, and I think it was David Carr, excuse me, going through it and what have you. Cool. The next morning I'm watching it again, and this time it's somebody else, and it's all of the same clips. What he is saying is exactly the same because these guys are reading a script that somebody is putting in front of them.
That's right.
And that is how narratives and all this stuff gets created. And it happens, if you continue to say it over and over again, people are going to buy into it. And, there were some folks on Twitter today talking about, Kyle Shanahan needs to come out and he needs to set this thing straight. He needs to make sure that everybody knows that Trey Lance is the quarterback.
He already did.
He did. He told you that.
Looking sunburned and high. He said it.
I mean, he said, he said that we believe Trey Lance is ready to go. If we didn't believe he was ready to go, we wouldn't have looked to try to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. And we believe that the time is now with Trey, something like that. He said it. And how many times do you want these guys to say it? I don't blame them for not doing it and not coming out because it would be exhausting because if that was the case, they would have to come out on a weekly to every other week basis because the way that the narratives are and I'm part of this with you, right? So I do the YouTube stuff. So I get one to get clicks. I get all that.
Yeah, we all do.
But the way that this stuff is set up is we could come on here with some of this stuff and we could have the same exact conversation every 2 to 3 weeks and it would be brand new to people because there's just so much information and they're bombarded with so much stuff. They forget what they heard 2 weeks ago. It's interesting.
All watch. I'll say about a guy like Derek Carr, Is it Derek Carr? Who's the one that played for the Texans? Is it not Derek?
David Carr. David Carr. I screwed
This
up on
man
that.
said Joe Montana wasn't a top 10 quarterback. So whatever comes out of this idiot's mouth, I don't really. What, man? When I turned that, man, I was so mad that day. My brother's like, "Why are you pissed?" I'm like, "This dude said Montana is not a top 10 quarterback all time." I'm like, Montana's like top. He's in the top 5, maybe top 3. You could say maybe he didn't have the arm like this guy or the stats like this guy, but when the man was in the bowl, he won, and he did. Montana didn't just play okay in Super Bowls; he played great. 11 touchdowns, no interceptions, nearly 70% completion percentage through all the Super Bowls. In the 89 playoffs alone, he threw 11 touchdowns.
Yeah, I was going to say that 89, that run that he made, really 88, 89, 90, those 3 years, he was the best quarterback in the NFL, hands down. And they get to the playoffs, and they blow out. Look at the plays he made even in 88 against the Vikings. Look at the plays that he made against Chicago
in that cold, windy game. Oh,
yeah, the drive down the field at the end of the Super Bowl to win it. The next year they were just a machine. 90,
they were really good. Yeah, they were good.
90, they just ran into. They just got caught by Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick with a good scheme and were able to knock Joe Montana out of the game, and for really all intents and purposes into his 49 career.
Yep. Real quick, and then I'll let you go. Games to watch in 2022. I got the Rams, the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Dolphins. It's my brother's team. And the reason I say the Dolphins is because we have a Kyle Shanahan disciple. They run pretty much the same offense. I think it's going to be an interesting game. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's the Dolphins." To me, that game comes down to a guy like their quarterback, Tua. If Tua can be better than what a lot of people think he is, the Niners will have, a difficult time. But if the Niners, because to me, the Niners are so great when their pass rush can get in there and really just feed on quarterbacks. Niners against
Dolphins.
Their offensive line is. No, I'm just saying the Niners against average quarterbacks, their defensive line eats. When they're against guys that can move around, they have some issues. So those are games that worry me. Like the Chiefs, the same thing. I worry. But even the Chargers, freaking their quarterback is fantastic as well. Any games that come to mind right away that really catch your interest for next season?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch. There's the Broncos, the Chiefs, the Rams, obviously, the Chargers, Dolphins, Buccaneers, Raiders. Those are all going to be good. That you're talking about that Dolphins game, and that Dolphins game too. That's a team that hasn't. That I think they won 10 games 2 seasons ago. Last season they weren't that bad either. That's a team that had a lot of talent before Mike McDaniel got there and redid it. I have the 49ers winning that game, but
me too.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one for them. There's a lot of talent out there in Miami. A lot of speed.
I have a friend who's 6'9" or 6'8". He's a Dolphins fan. My brother's a Dolphins fan. He's like, "Yo, bro, let's take a trip to California and watch that game." I'm thinking about it. I might do. I've never been on a plane before in my life, and I'm 42. I don't like big crowds, but that would be cool to go with my brother, and hopefully the Niners win. Even if they didn't, still it would be a good time. But that's gonna be great. Because listen, I'm a Niners fan. I don't follow any other team, but with my brother, I support his squad. When the Niners aren't playing, if the Dolphins were in the Super Bowl against another team, I'm rooting for them. Because that's my brother. But I think they're actually really freaking talented. To me, it's just quarterback play, really, if you think about it, that they need better quarterback play, and their offensive line last year was just abysmal. So we'll see.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be. This is a real. This is a tough schedule.
It is a tough schedule.
There's some tough games on there. We'll see how it all shakes out. I think the 49ers, the key for the 49ers is that first 6-week stretch. If they can finish that 6-0 or 5-1. It sets them up for a loss or two in the middle of that middle stretch, because that Chiefs, you look at that middle stretch: Chiefs, Rams, Chargers, Saints and Mexico City against the Cardinals. That's rough. That's a tough one right there. That it's set up for them to have a start, and I think they need it because that's again that go back to 2019. They started 8-0 before they felt they I think they were 5-3 down in the second half after starting 8-0.
I just want to say hi to Jesse Naylor real quick. Thanks for popping in here, my man. Always supporting me, and you and Jack are two of the best to do it, man. Anytime I get a chance to collab with either of you guys, it's always a freaking treat. Always a freaking treat. Because go ahead.
No, I was going to say I've been too nice to Jesse. I haven't had an argument with him on Twitter. In a while.
I haven't saw any. Your people think you guys are like you hate each other, and then you guys get on stream and you're like one of the, if not the best duos to do it on YouTube. I really like collabing with people because I always think it brings the better out of out of yourself, especially if the person you're talking to knows more or has more experience, or like you write, you have you're a credentialed media member. That's freaking awesome, man. Like I don't hate on that at all. I like being around greatness because I feel like maybe it'll rub off on me a little bit, but I enjoy talking to you guys, and Jesse is definitely one of the best.
I love working with Jesse. He's fun. He brings a different. We both look at the game in a different way, which makes it fun. That's partly why we go at each other during the season on Twitter as much as we do. But at the end of the day, when we argue on Twitter, it's just about football. It's not personal,
right?
And I think that's part of it too. And even sometimes we can laugh at each other and make fun of each other, but it's not. There's a difference between the tease and then something that goes across the line, and
right.
Hopefully Jesse feels like I haven't crossed it, and I know that he hasn't as far as I'm concerned.
Dude, I spazzed when we lost the NFC Championship game. I was pissed. I had people unfollow me and told me like I had to unfollow you because you're negative. I acted like a petulant little child. Like I'm a hater because the Rams have all this money and they spend it. The Niners are cheap, blah, blah, blah. I had to get over myself. I remember the stream, I was just crying like a little wuss. And people were like, wow, you're such a hater, bro. And then I thought about it. I'm like, man, I am a hater. I need to relax. So I appreciate you coming on, brother. I'll let you go. Thank you for giving me your time to discuss what else the San Francisco 49ers. We're in that little bit of dead period right now before like mini camp and training camp. So stuff to talk about it. Sometimes you have to hope something big drops. So like maybe Deebo gets signed, maybe Jimmy gets traded, and then we could have 7 or 8 streams about the same thing. So
yeah, no, I'm with you. It was fun. I'm glad. I know you've been reaching out to me, and stuff's just been kind of crazy, but things kind of calmed down a little bit this week, and I'm glad we were able to make it work out.
Absolutely, you're always a pleasure, and I always have a good time with you. Appreciate you making time. Appreciate the chat for being active. It's been a decent amount of people in here today. So I just want to say thank you. Thanks for supporting me and Jackhammer. Jackhammer's links to his YouTube channel and his Twitter are in my description. So don't forget to go and check out Jackhammer's channel. Have you hit 4,000 subs or are you past?
I passed 4,000, so I'm working my way to 5 now. So
nice. Well, everybody go support him because he's fantastic. I'm kind of I've been in a slow upward trajectory with hitting 5K. It's because I just don't stream as much anymore. I mean, I don't do as many if I do live stream, it's collaborative, So appreciate all the love from everybody. Thanks for coming in here and supporting us. Till next time, everyone, stay safe and healthy. And as I always say, I'll see you guys on the flip side. Take care, everyone.